If you're a member of the Interpreter and Translator Peer Support Group on Facebook, or if you've subscribed to the Interpreter and Translator Peer Support Initiative newsletter, you may have seen the video that I posted. I believe was it earlier this month or last month? I don't remember. It's not important. I posted a video about how I am actively experiencing burnout. So this video is kind of like an update to that. I didn't want to make that video public because it was a pretty specific video, and it was also kind of like an update to the Interpreter and Translator Peer Support Group. But this video I did want to make public because I'm going to talk about kind of like tips for burnout as well. I'm going to talk about the things that have helped me with my burnout. And I won't be sharing as many personal things in this video, but yeah, I guess I'll just go ahead and get started. And in the spirit of this video, because it's all about burnout and working too much, I'm not going to do all of the things with my videos that I normally do when I post them to my YouTube channel. That's kind of something else. That's probably like a tip for managing burnout, is not being a perfectionist, which I'm definitely a perfectionist. I have a certain standard and a certain way that I like to do things, and if something is less than what I expect of myself, I'm not happy with it. So I'm going to push myself a little bit here with this video, and I'm not going to do a lot of the post editing that I do with a lot of my videos, with the bells and whistles and transitions and things that I typically do. So that's the first thing that I don't even have on my list, is not being less of a perfectionist, accepting less than perfect. The second thing that I've been doing a lot of is saying no, which it seems a lot easier than it sounds, but I've been saying no a lot. I've been saying no to interpreting assignments. I've been saying no to people asking me to collaborate on projects with them. I've been saying no to a lot of things. And, some of these things are things that I would genuinely love to do. It's just, I have so much on my plate that I realistically just can't do much more than I'm already doing. And I think that's an important point about burnout, is you get to this point, if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll make time for your illness, right? So if you don't make the time to ensure that you're staying well, you'll often kind of hit a wall. And that's what happened to me, is I hit a wall where I was just kind of like, okay, well, I haven't been doing what I'm supposed to be doing and taking care of myself. So now I really have no choice. I cannot go on unless I start taking care of myself. And so that's kind of what happened. And speaking of taking care of myself, another big thing that's helped me with my burnout is listening to my body and taking breaks. And surprisingly, this has had the effect of making me be more productive. Let me give you an idea of the type of person I am. So, I am a chronic migraine sufferer, and fortunately, I'm on a medication right now that works really, really well. I don't get migraines unless I fly, and I also have a plan for that, which is why you will be seeing me at the California Healthcare Interpreting Association's conference in May, if this video is published before then, which it might not be, who knows. But I worked for a couple of years there with chronic migraines, and when you have a chronic illness, it's a lot different from, for instance, if you have the flu or a cold or something, you'll give yourself breaks because okay, if I rest now, I will feel better. But the thing about chronic illness is if you rest, you don't feel better. So I would often push myself. I would have a migraine and be actively working. I would take my medication to make me feel at least a little bit better, and I would use that time to get as much work done as I could. Because at the end of the day, when you're chronically ill, no matter what you do, the work keeps on piling up. And I really had no choice. My husband lost his job at the beginning of the pandemic, and then my stepson was doing virtual school at home, and my stepson really needed a lot of assistance, and so my husband was kind of tasked with that, and so I had to work to support the family on my income. So I really had no choice, just to work straight through, no matter how I felt. It didn't matter how I felt. So for me to actually get to the point where I listen to my body and I take breaks is a huge deal for me. If I'm working at my computer, or if I have a really exhausting week, really listening to my body and saying, you know what, Kelly, maybe you need to take it easy next week, or maybe you need to take it easy tomorrow. Or if I'm like working, because I work on a lot of stuff outside of interpreting, if I'm working at my computer for 3 hours, and I feel myself kind of becoming less productive and fading, instead of pushing through that, I step away. I might do some jumping jacks. I might go for a walk. I might play video games for 10 minutes. Oh God, that's really hard. Playing video games for just 10 minutes. I love video games. Anyways, lots of different things that you can do to just take a break. And I found that really interesting conclusion that if I actually stepped away and took a couple of minutes to refocus myself, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes half an hour, and came back, I would be way more productive than if I had just sat there and tried to force myself through it and worked really, really slow for the rest of the day. And so I said, I'll get up and I'll do jumping jacks, I'll get on the bike, I'll hula hoop, I'll go on a walk outside. That is also part of another thing that's really helped my burnout, is being more physically active. I would lie to myself. I would sit in my office and I'd be doing things and I would tell myself, you don't have time to be physically active. You don't have time right now. Even if it's just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that's 5, 10, 15 minutes less of work you're going to be able to do, and the more behind you're going to be tomorrow. That was a lie. Like I mentioned previously, if I listen to my body and I take breaks, I'm actually more productive in the time that I am in front of my computer. So that's been a big thing for me, is being more physically active in general, and not telling myself that lie, that 5, 10, 15 minutes I take is really going to make or break my work for the day, because it's not. It will, in the sense that if I take that 5, 10, 15 minutes and do 50 jumping jacks, which that's one of my favorite things to do now, I come back and I'm more focused and more productive. And then another thing that I've been doing, and it makes me, this is actually something that is bittersweet, is taking fewer interpreting assignments. So I'm an in-person medical interpreter. I am also an interpreter educator. I teach medical interpreting with Americans Against Language Barriers, and I'm also their director of member engagement for their Society of Professional Interpreters. So I run a lot of basically everything I do outside of interpreting to make a living is related to interpreter education. A lot of time at the computer. Do I love doing those things? Yes. But what do I love more? Interpreting. So for me to actually step back and take fewer interpreting assignments is a super huge deal for me. And it makes me feel like less of an interpreter, which makes me kind of sad. But at the end of the day, the benefits outweigh the risks, the positives outweigh the negatives. Just not having my schedule being so hectic where I take an interpreting assignment, come home, work for 30 minutes, leave home, go to an interpreting assignment, come home, work on something for an hour, leave home, go to 2 interpreting assignments in a row, and then come home and then work on more stuff in my office. By the end of the day, I just felt like, what the heck? My day is just too full. So by kind of limiting my interpreting assignments, it's reduced a lot of that stress, even if it has reduced, the fulfillment that I get from interpreting assignments. And I feel like this is a really good segue to the next thing that's really helped my burnout as an interpreter. are mentality shifts. So just kind of like almost like mantras or quotes that I kind of, or ideas that I center what I do around. So one of them is doing what replenishes me, not what drains me. Of course, there are some things that I have to do that drain me, but really reevaluating, okay, what do I have to do? That was also a big thing. But I've been trying to get into therapy, which is actually way more difficult than I was anticipating it would be, which is funny because I do really know how terrible the U.S. healthcare system and mental health care system is and how inaccessible it is. So for it to be worse than I expected is kind of a bad thing. But anyways, so I was looking at like, okay, I know there are like workbooks and things that people have. There's like a burnout workbook, lots of different things. And I actually found like a free PDF or like a free preview of a burnout workbook. And I didn't like most of the questions, but one of the questions that it asked was something along the lines of what replenishes you. And that really got me thinking, like, what does replenish me? Because, you know, when you're working to support your family, it's kind of like you forget about yourself and you put your needs, you throw your needs under the bus, right? So really focusing on what replenishes me. And interpreting replenishes me, which is funny because I said that if I interpret a lot, I get drained. So it was all about finding a balance between, okay, what amount of interpreting is going to replenish me versus drain me? Because I really do, I'm passionate about interpreting. I love interpreting. And I came to the conclusion that workers' compensation, for the most part, does not replenish me. It drains me. Seeing how people are not given the care that they need in the system that we have drains me. So what does replenish me? What types of interpreting assignments replenish me? It's kind of like the opposite of Andrea Henry's research on interpreter mental fatigue. It's the opposite. What are the interpreting assignments that replenish me? And it really comes down to me interpreting for pediatrics, pediatric occupational speech, feeding therapy, and I do have some regular patients that I interpret for. So those are mainly the assignments that I go for. Patients that I have been interpreting for a long time, and I know how the appointments are going to go, and I know they're generally positive appointments versus, kind of going in blind to a lot of these appointments, not knowing what they're going to be about. That uncertainty does create a little bit of anxiety in me. So really filtering out my interpreting assignments. So that's one of those mantras, doing what replenishes me, not what drains me. Some other mantras that I've been really centering on and focusing on and telling myself often, work will always be there. I would tell myself this lie constantly, that if I just put my nose to the grindstone and just worked really hard today, that I would make progress. But it turned out I had so much stuff on my plate, no matter how hard I worked, there was always going to be a long list of things that I wasn't getting done that day, or that month, or even this year. So telling myself work will always be there, whether I take a day off or whether I put my nose to the grindstone and do it. Of course, there are some things that are time sensitive that I need to get done, but generally speaking, most of the things that I do don't have a timeline. Because I'm a very motivated person who likes to do way too many things. Another thing that I've been telling myself a lot, and this might sound really surprising coming from me, for those of you who know me, really loud motorcycle outside. What the heck? Anyways. Interpreting is not everything. You ask my husband, if you're a stranger and you ask my husband about me, your wife, what does she do? Tell me a little bit about your wife. One of the first things that would come out of my husband's mouth would be, she's an interpreter. And that's kind of how it comes. That's how it is when someone asks me that question. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm an interpreter. My husband will make fun of me and be like, Kelly has a conversation with someone And even if it's something completely unrelated to interpretation, Kelly will somehow work in something about interpretation into that sentence or what she's saying. And that's true. I can't disagree with that. So the thing is that who I am does not start and end with being an interpreter. Which for folks who aren't in interpretation because they're passionate about it, that's totally okay. It can be just a job to you. That's fine. I'm not judging anyone who looks at interpreting that way. I think if you look at interpreting that way, you're much less likely to experience burnout. But if you're a person like me who sees interpreting as something that you're passionate about, you gotta have something else. Otherwise, you're more prone to burnout. And I felt a little bit depressed for a while when I kind of cut back on my work out of necessity. I felt like I kind of lost myself for a second. Like, what am I outside of interpreting? Okay, well, I'm a mom. I'm creative. I'm funny. I mean, whether or not you agree with that is your choice, but I like to think I'm funny. All sorts of other things, like really coming to terms with me, myself, and I, and what I am, and it's more than an interpreter. So having something, like I said, outside of interpreting is really important. Wow, I'm already 16 minutes in. There's just so much stuff to talk about because I've been doing lots of different things. And I also wanted to do a follow-up that was really in-depth, going into all of these things, giving people some tips. But also, some people were worried about me after I posted that video. And I feel really bad that people were worried about me. So it makes me feel good to be able to share all the things that I've been doing to work on my burnout. For a long time, I got to the point where I was working 7 days a week. I teach classes on weekends, usually in the mornings. And then sometimes after that, I'll have an event or something that I'm running. So some weekends I work until like 2:30, 3 o'clock. Most weekends I probably work until noon. And I'm still kind of working like 6-7 days a week, but I'm working less every day. So some days I might work until 5. Today I'm working until, I started at like 8 and I'm working until, oh God, now y'all are going to judge me. No, today I started working at like 9 and I'm going to stop working at like 8, probably like 8:30, 8:45. That's a really long day, but I'm not, I have lots of breaks throughout the day, lots of physical activity breaks, lots of breaks throughout the day to just kind of break up my day and make it not be so intense. And I'm doing a lot of things that I want to do, which is nice. But, like yesterday was Sunday? I think so. No, today's Tuesday. Yesterday was Monday. Monday, I had like nothing on my calendar. I did still do work in my office, but I think maybe I worked for like 3 hours yesterday. So generally speaking, yes, I will have late days some days, but generally speaking, I would say I'm working fewer hours throughout the week than I was before. I was working 7 days a week, and I mean, I was probably working at least like 60, 70 hours, if not more. Whereas now I'm looking at more like around like 40 or less. Which, thank you. I'm so glad my husband is working again. He's finally gotten to a point in school where, because he's getting his degree, he's finally gotten to a point in school where he can work and go to school at the same time. He's studying chemistry. Very intense major. Another thing that I'm doing is I'm also sleeping in at least a few days a week. This is made possible by the fact that I am actually working most days, but that I'm working less. So like yesterday, I'm pretty sure I slept in until like 11 or 12 o'clock. So that was nice. Getting enough rest has been really key. And then this is kind of a controversial one. I know the list, it just never ends, but really taking care of yourself is so involved. It involves so much. So I've also been buying things for myself. Now, I know a lot of people say that self-care shouldn't cost money, shouldn't involve spending money. I mean, sometimes it does. Sometimes it's things like, paying to go to the dentist. That's probably something I need to do. But in my case, personally, I disagree. In my personal situation, in my personal circumstances, it can be so incredibly demoralizing to work so much and not spend any of that money on yourself, aside from your basic necessities. And that was something that weighed really heavily on me for a couple of years there, was I was working so much and I was making a decent amount of money, but it all went towards bills, towards food, and y'all know the prices of everything have gone up so much. So it just felt like I was working for nothing, just to keep afloat. And so what I would do is I would actually, this was a gradual thing. Even before I kind of came to the realization that I was super burnt out, I started buying myself one overpriced salad a week. Which that doesn't seem like a lot. Like, Kelly, you bought yourself a salad a week. That was actually a huge thing for me. And it was something that I looked forward to. And I'm kind of going not in a linear fashion here. But there were a lot of things that I had saved. I would find things that I would like, and I just couldn't justify spending the money at that time. And so I would bookmark them. I would save them for later. And I finally got to the point where, okay, my husband's working again. I can afford to maybe spend a little bit of money on myself. And it was really sad. I went through all the bookmarks of all the things that I looked at. A lot of them were things that I was looking forward to. And most, if not all of the things that I had saved were out of stock or no longer available. So that was a journey. But I did start finding things that I liked again. And I started buying myself things. Like, not a whole lot. Like, I'm not reckless spending here. By no means do I want to encourage anyone to spend recklessly. But, if you're feeling like, I do not spend money on myself and I'm working a lot, that might make you feel a little bit better. I'm not gonna lie. And then I bought clothes, which I was feeling really terrible about my body and my body image. I stopped paying for haircuts for a while because I felt guilty for spending money on myself. So I started paying for my haircuts again. And recently I bought myself clothes that I really wanted, and they weren't on sale, because that's the thing, is like I would only buy myself clothes that were on sale, that were super discounted at like secondhand stores or places like Ross and TJ Maxx, because I just felt guilty spending money. But this time I actually bought like brand new clothes that weren't on sale, which it feels like I'm breaking like someone's rule in someone's book there. But it turns out that a lot of my issues about my body image, not all of them, but a decent portion of them, came from the fact that I was wearing clothes that were old and didn't fit me well. And so I was able to actually buy some clothes that fit me well and I look good in, and I'm happy with those clothes. And you'd be surprised what that does for your self-image. Call me materialistic, call me vain, whatever, I don't care. I'm a Libra, so I expect it. But I think that's worth something. That's valuable. So yeah, that's really all I have on my list. That's it, Kelly. That's it. Just 20 minutes, 25 minutes of all that. Wow, that was a very, very short list. No. That's pretty much all on my list of the things that I at least have written down about what's helped my burnout as an interpreter. I think something that I was really struggling with was I was telling myself that it was impossible for me to overcome burnout while still actively working. I think that was a lie I was telling myself, and I think that's a lie that a lot of people tell themselves, is that you have to stop working to overcome burnout. And that's just not true. I'm still working. I'm still making about as much money as I was making before. I'm just reprioritizing. And, this cutting back on interpreting assignments thing is kind of temporary. I had a backlog of work to work through to kind of get myself in a better headspace. So working through that backlog has been very helpful. I will say, though, that burnout is something that's much easier to prevent than to fix. It's better, oh my gosh. See, I get the sayings mixed up in English and Spanish all the time. It's better to, it's like that saying I mentioned in the beginning. You got to make time for your illness, otherwise you'll be forced to make time for your wellness, otherwise you'll be forced to make time for your illness. So the prevention is always better than the cure. There it is. So taking active steps to mitigate burnout, not lying to yourself, telling yourself that, oh, I'll have to take like a week off of work, 2 weeks off of work, a month off of work to really overcome my burnout. I need to take a vacation. I don't think a vacation is going to fix anything, because you're just going to come right back to work and it's going to be the exact same thing. You have to, a mentality shift, a schedule change, something drastic, or even working towards drastic change. Something needs to change. You can't just go back to the way it was and just pretend like it's not going to happen again. So taking those active steps and taking little steps, taking whatever feels most manageable to you, taking some tips from my super long list. Even if you just try one of those things, I think you should see a difference and you should feel better. So that's about all I have to say about that's all, Kelly, only after 27 minutes. That's about all I have to share about things that have helped my burnout as an interpreter. If I think of anything else, I might make another video, but I just wanted to update you all, and I hope that you found this video helpful. And if you're currently experiencing burnout or you feel like you're about to get there, remember that I have this really great initiative called the Interpreter and Translator Peer Support Initiative. We do have live Zoom meetings. I try to do them at least once a month, but it's only me. And we also have a private Facebook group, in addition to a chat in our private Facebook group where you can talk to others. You can even post anonymously in the Facebook group to kind of talk through your experiences and get some support from your colleagues. So there is hope if you have burnout.